When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and it's time to get wealthy. You're going to learn exactly what you need to know and do to finally achieve the level of financial success you desire and you deserve. When Facebook changed its name to Meta, it was described as ushering in the Metaverse, this new virtual world built in virtual reality. So what is the Metaverse, or Web 3.0 as we hear it, and what do we need to know to make sure that we're not sitting on the outside looking in? Well, our guest today is going to share with us exactly what we need to know and do. But before we get started, here are the 3 things you may not know about Web 3.0. First, it's estimated to be an $8 trillion economy. Secondly, the assets in this virtual world are digital. And then finally, the major brands are already playing in the Metaverse. And here to share with us what we need to know to get wealthy is Karen Baker. She is the founder and president of Boathouse Inc., Washington, D.C. office. She's an award-winning executive specializing in design and strategic research. And she's also pursuing a doctor of design of North Carolina State University. And with that, I want to welcome Karen to Get Wealthy. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
But before we even get into this conversation, I think it's important for you to kind of define for us in layman terms, what is this Metaverse and Web 3.0?
And a great way to put it is in layman's terms, because it had to be described for me in layman's terms, because, again, when innovation comes around, there's a complication to always kind of understanding it, particularly when you talk about technology. And I've had people say Web 3.0 and Metaverse are the same. They are not the same. So right now, what we're in currently is Web 2.0. So this is the next iteration and advancement with Web 3.0. What it brings in is this digital currency. The advancement from that, or the addition to it, is the Metaverse, which is a lot of conversation taking place in this as well, because it's this second layer of being able to be physically active in a space that is virtual. So, we take examples like, if you've ever seen the movie Ready Player One, where you saw them go into this alternate space, then you have the ability with the Metaverse to stay present where you are, but also be in this alternate space as well. So these are exciting things that are coming about. And, I've been spending a lot of time now really wanting to educate our community on the fact that this is coming, and it's coming fast.
Well, it is interesting. I heard Web 3.0 described as the 3D version of Web 2.0. And so to that end, Karen, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but you know what I thought of? I thought of the Sims game.
Yes,
when you had
exactly.
these characters, right?
Yeah.
And so, my kids, when they just really got kind of engrossed in that world, and so I was buying Sims version, whatever. But in fact, they were building worlds. So the way I look at it is that it's no longer characters that we're just playing with on the screen. We're actually going to create our own avatar and be kind of navigating in this virtual world. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where the Metaverse comes in as well, too, because it gives you the opportunity to be able to create this avatar. I say it gives you the opportunity, if you choose, to be able to be whatever you want to be. You know, if you even think about, I've said Lego, and if you want to be a green person in that world, you have an opportunity to be a green person in that world. So that is what the metaverse will bring. But you're absolutely right. The Sims was a very, very popular game. People still play it to this day. It wasn't just your kids. A lot of adults play The Sims. It took on a life of its own. So, you know, this is, again, this advancement in technology with the Web 3.0, it brings in this piece of digital currency. Because, you know, in games like that, you had like credits and things like this. This is something people are going to accept and actually have an opportunity to live due to this digital currency, to use it as a means of exchange.
Transfer of exchange and dollars.
Correct.
And so where I want to go now is on Get Wealthy, we have a framework for success that we call mindset, strategy, and execution. Mm-hmm. And so I want to begin with the mindset piece, because I do think it's very, very important for people to have a different kind of mindset as it relates to now dealing with in this Web 3.0. Yeah. So to that end, what mindset do we need to adopt in order to be successful, play in this new world, and also use it to the opportunity to our advantage, particularly when it comes to building wealth?
Yeah, I think the first thing is not to think it's going anywhere. It is going to be here. It is here to stay. The other thing is starting to educate really on what it is. You know, when you talk about cryptocurrency, you talk about Bitcoin, which came about some years ago. I remember someone explaining it to me, and my head wanted to explode. I'm like, this is really a lot, you know. So you're going to have to sit in workshops and webinars to really understand how it plays into, you know, the economy in itself, because it will play in the economy. People are very early in it now. Not to say there's not any hiccups to it. We have the Federal Reserve, you know, taking place in digital currency as well, too. But you're going to have to really understand it, because it is something that's going to, they're looking at it as a wealth builder. They're looking at it in that way. And what you mentioned in the very beginning, Deborah, Goldman Sachs anticipating it bringing $8 trillion in 2030, but they're looking at $800 billion in 2024, which we know that's only 2 years away, right? So you want to not miss the opportunity. It's becoming very big in real estate as well, too. People are doing rental properties in the metaverse, and you know, you can have a property here and rent it in the metaverse. So here comes the ability to build wealth. So people have to really start to look at the space and don't think, oh, that's for later. I don't need to know. It's happening now, and it's economically impacting us as well.
Well, I'm so glad you said that. But what's really interesting, if you look at the stats, for example, and that's my next question to you around NFTs or non-fungible tokens and cryptocurrency. What we are seeing is that Black Americans are holding more of those assets as a percentage of their investments than other communities. Yeah. And we typically are early adopters and consume a lot of technology. And and from the statistics and the research that I did on Web 3.0, that is also occurring. But, you know, again, it's just like the wealth gap in terms of investment assets, right? And these are going to be digital assets. We are more consumers as opposed to actually being the creators. And I know you're doing a lot of work in that regard to make sure that folks know that we also need to be the creators. So talk to us a little bit about that mindset and how we need to be thinking in terms of transferring our skills even to this new virtual world.
No, I appreciate that question, truly. Yeah, that is a lot of what drives my passion for this, because developers and creators still don't look like our community. Even the investments that are being made are not necessarily happening. I was talking to someone who's in the NFT space, and I was asking him what are the problems that he's running into, and he was like, the investment. When I bring the conversations to investors as a developer, it was like, I'm being offered a quarter of what is being offered to other communities. Particularly, I'm talking about Caucasian developers and creators. And he was like, that in itself is a fight that he's consistently fighting. He's having to turn things down when they're looking at him like, oh, why is this a problem? So he said that is still occurring for developers and creators of Black and brown creators who are trying to come into the space and bring applications into the space. This is still a problem. So that representation and that seat at the table is completely an issue. So I've been in spaces where people want to consistently talk about, we do have an understanding, or we're like you said, on the consumer end of it all, but then they don't want to have the conversation about representation at that table, that we are having the ability to be on the end of the developer and the creator. And that's what really needs to change.
And so the other question that I have for you, I think we need to, we've kind of explained Web 2.0 or Web 3.0, this metaverse, and how it is gaining traction, if you will. But what we haven't, I think what our audience needs to understand is, what is an NFT? What is a non-fungible token? And how is it being used in terms of creating assets?
You know, the NFTs, which, you know, is the non-fungible term, is constantly thrown around. So when you talk about the non-fungible tokens, I'll point to a show, and it may give people a better reference. You've seen it a lot in the art community, particularly. But if you watch the show Queen Sugar, this whole season, they introduced NFTs, which I love when our shows are introducing this. And The Shy introduced cryptocurrency in during the summertime too, as a means to start educating as well. But it is the ability, it has its privacy to it. So if you take, for instance, let's take Queen Sugar. He had a video from a previous season that he only held assets to. He put it on the NFT as an NFT, and he made $200,000 from it because someone bought it and then they owned it. So you have, it's this ownership that only you have versus, you know, when people talked about the web and talked about social media platforms in particular, the information that was being put out was, you know, public. All of us had access to it. These are things that you can sell, like a tweet that you only have, that no one else has, and be able to sell it for particularly a large amount of money. People will bid on it, is what will happen. So people have been doing it with art.
And I think what you have just described is that it's a way. So for example, when we see something that has a copyright on it, oftentimes people are, you know, copying it, right? And taking information, you know, and not even giving attribution. But you are saying, how you're describing it is this this NFT, what it really allows someone to do is make this digital asset one of a kind. Correct. And you're unable to duplicate it. And also you can only access it if the owner of that digital asset allows you to. Correct.
Absolutely. And that's one reason I believe that it's, you know, done very well in art, because if you have an original piece of art, you know, as we know, as artists, you own that piece, you know, and you decide to place it, you know, within that space in order to sell it. And the hope is that it will sell very well. And then that person has that piece of art. So that's the space that it's been doing, you know, extremely well in, because, you know, you produce these original pieces, but you wouldn't duplicate it, is what you would not do. So you're absolutely correct.
Okay, so perfect segue into the next part of the framework, which is strategy. And so now I want to talk a little bit about with you, what are the strategies that folks need to have in order to start playing in this arena based on the skill set and the opportunities that are available to them? So don't go anywhere, folks. When we come back, we're going right into strategy and what you need to do to understand how to play in this new virtual world.
Let's be honest, as successful women, we're crushing it. Maxed out 401k and Roth IRA? Check. Aggressive savings and investments? Check. Yet, The freedom our success was supposed to buy can leave us stuck on the six-figure hamster wheel, watching retirement slip further down the road. There's another way. Get coaching courses and community at wealthyu.com.
Know your rights before you vote. If you have any questions or a problem voting, call or text 1-866-OUR-VOTE. For more information, call or text 1-866-OUR-VOTE.
I am Letitia Hill Gadet, owner of Ottendorf Laboratories. In America, our freedom of speech and the right to peacefully protest is a wonderful thing, but faith without works is dead. Will you take souls to the polls? If you don't vote, all of your activities were done in vain. I am an ordained minister, a presiding elder in the AME Zion Church, a wife, a mother. I am spending my time and my resources to encourage you to vote.
Paid for by Ottendorf Laboratories.
We've got to stand up. Republicans are banning abortion rights, tearing down democracy, blocking progress. But when Democrats stand together, we win. Because we voted, Democrats stood up for Black lives, voting to ban police chokeholds, stood up for Black women, putting one on the Supreme Court, stood up for our families, lowering cost of health care and prescriptions and capping insulin, and stood up for millions by slashing student debt. This November, let's stand up together and keep making progress.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Deborah Owens, and this is Get Wealthy. And we're talking about Web 3.0 with Karen Baker, our guest. And now we want to talk about what are the strategies that you need to adopt and begin to think about how you're going to take advantage of the opportunities in Web 3.0. Karen, I want to thank you, first of all, for really setting the stage. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because I think there are all kinds of implications with Web 3.0. And one of them is sort of what you're hanging your hat on, and that's making sure that there is representation in this virtual world, right? Just like out in this, in our physical world, in real life, right, as they call it, we see, cultural appropriation or people not being included. So talk about what strategies we need to have in order to navigate and participate in Web 3.0 and have equity in it.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's continuing to be a conversation. And again, I'm trying to push it to be a heavy conversation. One of the things is, being able to, it's knowledge of the space, one. And so we talked about as well, too, education on what space you want to occupy. So whether you want to be on the developer and the creator end, which is what I'm encouraging to happen. And then it's looking at who's investing in that. We really need to push people to invest. So those who are in investment now, it would be great to strategically to start to support those who are not represented in the tech space, to start supporting them with the things that they're developing and they're creating that are going to be access to the metaverse. So what I'll do is I'll give credit to Meta because they have an immersive learning lab that they have created that they put $100 million into, that they're starting to take in applications for. But we have to make sure that we apply, that we start to be part. And if we don't, if we turn around and are not being accepted, then we could be that call of action. Someone said to me, maybe we need a watchdog for the metaverse, and that may be the case, to make sure that we have the representation that we need. But we do need Black and brown investors to say, I'm going to put money behind, for me, that's a strong strategy, into those who are trying to develop applications and better ways to use NFTs, who are trying to create cryptocurrency wallets, that people can use in order. That's the process you'll use in order to do the digital economy. So things like that, I think strategically are going to be helpful. really understanding that we want to need to be clear, a seat at the table as this innovation, because it is truly an innovation, starts to move very quickly.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because I think that there is a whole, just the focus of Get Wealthy is really educating folks about investments. It's something that we don't learn in our formal education. And one of the other stats that I like to bring to bear is that UBS recently did a study on multicultural wealth, high net worth, and people have been able to make it into that realm of investable assets of $1 million or more. And one of the most telling things about how that wealth is created has been specifically, if you look at some communities, a great deal of wealth has been created because they picked the industry of technology, right? And so it came from their earnings. And so what we see is that in terms of the high paying careers even, right, that they are in tech. And so my question to you is, here's another opportunity that is what I believe another layer of complexity, right?
Yeah, correct.
And getting accessibility to be hired, right, in that world to build things, as we're talking about. So what, in your opinion, based on the knowledge that you have, do people need to be doing to A, transfer their existing skills into that world, and also bring the next generation in so that they are developers of the asset and own the asset as opposed to just consumers?
Yeah, that's a great question, Deborah. I think that, this is probably where some of our institutions are going to come in, of being able to invite these conversations into schools of engineering, where we know technology ends up being housed, computer science, bringing in opportunities like this, coming into our institutions where we have metaverse labs, because again, it's going to happen. So again, economically, if you just look at the numbers, there's no way we live in the United States of America, they're going to allow $8 trillion to just float away. So we have to be prepared. So I think higher education institutions are going to be a part of the training that needs to happen to be able to have our young people be part of this very early on. And also, one thing I'm a believer in is vocational training is going to be great. So, opportunities for maybe even Microsoft, not just a Meta, to be able to have some type of cohort that allows people to take part in that, who not necessarily wants to go straight to a higher education, but has the skills to be able to pick up through a certification is what I'm trying to say. So I think.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish, Karen, because I'm really glad you double clicked on that.
Yeah, certification is going to be key. I've been in higher education for 16 years, and I've taught certification programs which advance a person's career where they are now. So that is going to be a key. So if you're already in technology, and maybe you're in one area of it, and this is starting to happen, we need certifications in it as well that are going to allow people to be able to learn and then bounce right into this career.
What I really appreciate about you bringing up vocational and schools and certification is that what we have found is particularly if we look at where all the student loan debt is, where the amount of investment that we make in education, and for Black women, we're some of the highest educated, and yet we're not going into these fields.
Correct.
So the question I have is just that do we need to be exposing our kids to this much earlier on, even in high school? Because there is a company here called in the Washington, D.C. area called Catalyte. Actually, they're based in Baltimore. And one of the things they do is they test people to see if they have the aptitude to become a developer. And if you test well, They literally teach you how to be a developer, and then you have an opportunity to either stay with them. And now that you have that skill set, usually you're in demand. And I'm wondering if that application is an approach that we need to begin to use so that our kids, even, as a pathway into a career, that it not necessarily just be a 4-year degree. I don't want anybody to say that I don't think the higher education is a good, is valuable, but I feel like we need to be much more tactical and strategic about it.
No, I totally agree. And I think high school, we can't leave it out for sure. We're in the process now talking with a federal agency about bringing in a Metaverse Lab. And one thing they want to do is HBCUs, but I mentioned to them, what about high school students, like juniors and seniors in high school, and how can we start to introduce that? So one thing that's part of the Metaverse is Roblox. And if you have a young person in your life who gets on gaming, they know about Roblox. Even at 13, 12 years old. So because Roblox is a part of the metaverse, why not start to introduce it to them now? Why not start to have them learn not to just play the game with their friends, but be an asset to them as they start to move themselves across? So things like that, can actually start to occur very young, to actually start to develop and cultivate a community that is going to decide whether they want to go vocational, as we are discussing, or they want to go higher education, or their job is actually going to train them because they have already the tools in their tool belt very early on. So no, I'm a big believer because the games are already out there and the kids are already playing them.
Great point. And there is such a correlation between the wealth gap and the digital divide.
Correct.
And part of that is accessibility,
yes,
but also the fact that we, through our, K through 12 education, financial literacy isn't integrated into that curriculum. And I would say, particularly because of the opportunity with Web 3.0 for careers, to develop products, that it's exactly what we need to be thinking about. And because kids are already immersed in it, in technology, taking it one step further and helping them understand how that technology is being created. So thanks so much. Love having this conversation about strategy. And now when we come back, one of the things I want to talk about, and we've kind of been on that road already, is execution. So you're learning about Web 3.0. What are the things that you need to do now to execute on this opportunity? Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back.
I am Letitia Hill Gadet, owner of Adendorf Laboratories. In America, our freedom of speech and the right to peacefully protest is a wonderful thing, but faith without works is dead. Will you take souls to the polls? If you don't vote, all of your activities were done in vain. I am an ordained minister, a presiding elder in the AME Zion Church, a wife, a mother. I am spending my time and my resources to encourage you to vote.
Paid for by Adendorf Laboratories.
We've got to stand up. Republicans are banning abortion rights, tearing down democracy, blocking progress. But when Democrats stand together, we win. Because we voted, Democrats stood up for Black lives, voting to ban police chokeholds, stood up for Black women, putting one on the Supreme Court, stood up for our families, lowering cost of health care and prescriptions and capping insulin, and stood up for millions by slashing student debt. This November, let's stand up together and keep making progress.
It's time to know your rights. If someone is questioning your right to vote, call or text 1-866-OUR-VOTE. For more information, call or text 1-866-OUR-VOTE.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and we've been talking about the Metaverse and Web 3.0 and the opportunity that it presents with Karen Baker, who is pursuing a doctorate, if you will, in this, a doctor of design in this field, and is educating us on exactly why Web 3.0 is so important. And so, Karen, we've covered a lot of ground thus far. We've talked about mindset, we've talked about strategy, and now I want to go to execution.
Okay.
And I believe that the execution part of it, the point that you made earlier, is about crypto and non-fungible tokens, and why it's so important that we educate ourselves around the digital assets and digital currency. So what advice would you give to our audience about becoming engaged and executing in the metaverse right now? What are the things that they need to do in order to play?
You know, I think that the biggest thing with playing in this space is it's going to require putting a little bit of your money into it. And that depends on where you are, you know, financially. My mother will be 81 years old in December, and she's the one that came to me about participating in cryptocurrency. She manages my cryptocurrency wallet. So it is not an age thing. That's the reason I even bring that up. But the understanding of it, I mean, she came to me to say that this is something that beyond me, you'll need. You know, you'll need to understand this. This is an investment that I want to make for you. I need you to put your money into this, and this is where the future is going. So I think that, again, you know, and it wasn't a hefty lift to start it up. You know, it was a couple $100s, but you have to understand what you're doing as you move around within that cryptocurrency wallet. You know, so constantly being educated in that, sitting on, like I said before, sitting on webinars, sitting with people who really understand it and know it. Just go into the space is what I say. Go. That's the best way to execute it, is to go into the space. When it comes to NFTs, you know, that is a place where I think technology becomes a bit of a heavier understanding, because you do have to have something that you know that is going to have a level of value, I would say, to be able to play in that space. And like I said, art is very big in it. So I think there's certain people playing in that space. But when it comes to cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, you know, looking at things like that, I think that people can start there and actually start to move into the space through that. I think those are the best ways of execution.
Love that. And also, I believe that the way you learn is through doing, right? So if you're sitting on the outside looking in and you don't actually own it, then you never have any ownership of it. And so then it doesn't seem tangible at all. Correct. And I almost wonder, in doing the research on the metaverse and these new worlds that are being created, I wonder what your thoughts are on, because now these transactions in this virtual world are going to be through digital assets. I wonder if that could also be a demand, right, for these digital assets and currencies.
Yeah, I think that it will. I think, you know, it's like, you know, playing on Wall Street, you know, where you're going to have to just kind of watch it and see what actually starts to trend, I guess you would say. Even when I was reading the Federal Reserve article yesterday to see, you know, what was coming out of it and where the percentages were going and things like that, you know, that's the type of information you'll have to start to kind of understand. And it's a place I'm learning and understanding, because before, you know, living in this space of economics and finance, you shy away from it. You know, and that's one reason I think we sometimes get left out of the conversation, because either we're not invited in or we don't understand the terminology, which makes it so that we're not comfortable. So I think pushing through those barriers, even within and the barriers without, are going to be key as well, too, to make sure that we're in the room listening and understanding and being able to use it to our benefit.
You brought up a great point, and that is that we're not just sitting on the outside looking in, and we're not just consumers. One other question I had for you is, as you look at the metaverse, what kind of jobs do you think that Web 3.0 are going to create that people need to be positioning themselves and to transfer their skills so that they can take advantage of this opportunity?
One area I've been pushing a lot, and this has to do with my doctorate, the designers. Who's going to design what this application looks like and who's in this application is going to be big. Designers hold a lot of power in what they do. It's not just a developer as well, too, because the developer is on the application and software end of it all. And sometimes they design as well, too. But when someone starts to think about what does this look like? Who is this for? Who's going to be part of this community? Do we meet their needs? Do we make sure that we look at the things that they want? Are we talking about accessibility, people who live with disabilities? Are we going to be able to see themselves in that space as well? Designers are going to be key to that. So designers, developers, and creators right now are going to be big in that space. So even if you say, I don't know that I want to develop be part of the software end of it, you may be an asset and being a designer of it, ensuring that what it looks like and what I experience in the metaverse is something that I feel inclusive and I feel like I belong.
That's good. That's good. So, I think we probably over-index on as African Americans on the creative side and on the design side. And what you're saying is, if you're a fashion designer, perhaps you can also use that skill set in the metaverse. And I hear there's going to be a lot of commerce opportunities. In fact, one of the points that you brought up is that Nike actually bought a shoe designer, right? An NFT designer. So talk to us about how that could play in people thinking about how they transfer their skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And a fashion designer is a good one to bring up because, Nike, when they went into the metaverse, they went into the metaverse very early. I mean, Nike's brand is always in innovation, and they created Nike Land. And so that involved fashion. So you could go into Nike Land and be able to look at exclusive opportunities of looking at things that they were actually designing. So designers were a big part of that. Fashion designers were a big part of that. Same thing, Adidas did that as well, too. One brand that did it was surprising and was bought to me was Degree Deodorant. They actually designed a space for those living with disabilities and allowed them to participate in a marathon in the metaverse. So they were able to take part in something they typically may not be able to take part of here. They made it so that they were able to celebrate their disabilities within the metaverse by taking part in this marathon that was created. And that required a designer to do so. So the design world has to also be understanding of how they play into the metaverse because I believe they hold a lot of power.
That's good. Lastly, the only other thing I wanted to touch on is artificial intelligence and its role, the role that it's going to play in this metaverse. And I think there are two sides to that, right? Artificial intelligence is the ability to mimic someone. You're seeing a lot of these videos that have been altered, right, in terms of voice or actually duplicating someone like yourself. What are the things that we need to consider about AI in the metaverse?
So, AI is going to be an important part in the metaverse because of marketing. That is where it's going to come in and be very important. This is the thing that when I came to Boathouse, I was very excited to learn more about how you use AI in marketing. And it's going to come into play because it's going to allow marketing companies to be able to understand a lot quicker who their audience is, even their sentiments, what they're passionate about. So AI is going to be able to pull that information that as a human sitting in this space, it's going to take me longer to understand how you're engaging with content that I'm giving to you, whether it's in the digital space and social media, or it's going to be in the metaverse. So I've sat in on demonstrations where you have the ability to put an ad out and it will turn around and register the sentiments that Deborah has when she sees that ad. It'll point to places and say, oh, when she looked at this word, it raised this type of emotion for her. When she looked at this word, it did nothing. And we can go back and say, okay, let's redesign this ad, create parts that are going to make it so that Deborah purchases a lot faster. So those are the things that are going to be key. AI is going to be a big part of it. Don't think of AI only as robots walking around.
Well, no, it's interesting because one of the things that I recently used was an editing program that was AI, and literally I was able to put in a blog post, and they came back with it, and it was was much better than someone I had actually edit that post. So
Correct.
In so many ways, I think there are two implications to artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah.
It is going to make some of the existing careers, particularly around kind of technical administrative tasks, it's going to take that away, and that we need to be thinking about those implications and what we need to stay relevant. So this has been a great conversation and a great primer on the metaverse, Karen. And when we come back, I want to go through, you could consider it our lightning round: analyze, optimize, maximize, based on the conversation that we have had in these different areas: mindset, strategy, execution. What are the 3 takeaways that you think are a priority for our audience? So when we come back, it's our analyze, optimize, and maximize segment. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back.
Exercise your right to vote. If the lines are long or you're getting turned away, call or text 1-866-OUR-VOTE. For more information, call or text 1-866-OUR-VOTE.
I am Letitia Hill Gadet, owner of Adendorf Laboratories. In America, our freedom of speech and the right to peacefully protest is a wonderful thing, but faith without works is dead. Will you take souls to the polls? If you don't vote, all of your activities were done in vain. I am an ordained minister, a presiding elder in the AME Zion Church, a wife, a mother. I am spending my time and my resources to encourage you to vote.
Paid for by Adendorf Laboratories.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
We've got to stand up. Republicans are banning abortion rights, tearing down democracy, blocking progress. But when Democrats stand together, we win. Because we voted, Democrats stood up for Black lives, voting to ban police chokeholds, stood up for Black women, putting one on the Supreme Court, stood up for our families, lowering cost of health care and prescriptions and capping insulin, and stood up for millions by slashing student debt. This November, let's stand up together and keep making progress.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Deborah Owens, and this is Get Wealthy. And we've been talking about getting wealthy in the metaverse and what you need to know to play and win, and not just be sitting on the outside thinking this is a complex topic. So Karen Baker has been here. She is the founder of the Washington, D.C. office of Boathouse Incorporated, a designer. And Karen, I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing in bringing attention to this important Web 3.0 and the implications it has on African Americans, on, well, marginalized communities of all colors, right?
Right.
And so now I know we've had a pretty robust conversation. And what I would love for you to do is just button this up. What are the 3 things that we need to know and do if we're going to really engage and take advantage of this opportunity?
Yeah, that's a great question to sum it up. I think one is, I'm an educator. So I'm like, educate yourself on what the metaverse is, Web 3.0 and digital currency. Really start to see there is so much information out there, and it can get overwhelming, as we know, information overload. But even trying to find a group that you know that you can actually sit in and be part of and start to ask questions. I think one of the best platforms is doing this is Clubhouse. I think the other thing about it is understanding the economic impact that Web 3.0 and the metaverse are going to have as well too. So start to pay attention to people like Goldman Sachs. You know, they have a whole division dedicated to this. Ask yourself why, because economically it's going to impact us as well too. Then I think about the opportunities and jobs and what that's going to bring. From what we discussed, from middle school to high school to college to already in people sitting in their careers, and how can you make sure that you're part of that? But the other thing that's really big is investment. Those who are already in the investment space, we need you to seek out developers and creators of color and ensure that they get a level of support that's not happening right now.
That's good. That's good. Well, Karen, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, about Web 3.0. And what I really value most of all is your making this mission of education and awareness and inclusion a conversation that you're pushing forward. To make sure that we're all included and that we're not just on the outside looking in. So thank you so much for coming on Get Wealthy.
Thanks so much, Deborah. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So when we come back, the 3 takeaways from today's show that you should know about the metaverse. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Know your voting rights. If you are unsure where to vote or don't know if your polling location has changed, call or text 1-866-OUR-VOTE. For more information, call or text 1-866-OUR-VOTE.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
We've got to stand up. Republicans are banning abortion rights, tearing down democracy, blocking progress. But when Democrats stand together, we win. Because we voted, Democrats stood up for Black lives, voting to ban police chokeholds, stood up for Black women, putting one on the Supreme Court, stood up for our families, lowering cost of health care and prescriptions and capping insulin, and stood up for millions by slashing student debt. This November, let's stand up together and keep making progress.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and I hope you've been enjoying our conversation on Web 3.0 and the metaverse, and most importantly, that you're learning how to get wealthy based on the knowledge that you gained. So here are the 3 takeaways from today's show. Understanding the jargon like NFTs and what it means to understand digital assets is important. The other thing that's important is that Black developers get involved, and as Karen indicated, that we invest in this early stage of the metaverse. And then finally, that equity and integration are essential to make sure that there is full representation in the metaverse. I'm Deborah Owens. Thanks for watching Get Wealthy, and we'll be right here, and make sure you're watching our next episode.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is rolling@RolandSMartin.com.